who cares whose fault it was? Because irrelevant, it is your responsibility to take your circumstances and live the best life possible. That is your responsibility. And if you're willing to look in the mirror and accept that, that can be a difficult discomfort to take on.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Casazza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL. Today's guest is an active duty member of the United States Army Special Forces. He is the first Green Beret we have had on this show. And his story is the ultimate comeback story. In 2013, while deployed in Afghanistan, he and his detachment fell victim to an insider attack, ultimately resulting in the loss of his leg. Instead of taking medical leave, he returned to his detachment. He is considered the first Special Forces operator to return to combat as an above-the-knee amputee. He is also the first amputee to complete the Special Forces Warrant Officer Technical and Tactical Certification Course, the Special Operations Combative Program Instructor Course, and the Combat Diver Qualification Course in military history. He also has a book, which I highly recommend, called Objective Secure, the Battle-Tested Guide to Goal Achievement. I am so excited to talk with him today. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Nick Lavery. Nick, thank you so much for being on my show.
Hi, Gina. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am doing fantastic. And first of all, you're the first Green Beret on the show, which I'm really excited about. And I want to talk a little bit about, because I'm just getting right into it. I just want to get right into the meat of it all. But I want to talk about childhood for you. Like, what was childhood like? Did you put yourself through hard things? Like, how did you get your mindset to where it needed to be to become a Green Beret?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, I was an athlete, and that's really what I attribute a lot of my kind of development to. But the irony is, you know, this is a product of a lot of continuous self-reflection and analysis. Is, you know, I went towards sports as really kind of an outlet to an attempt to fill this gap that I had in me, this void, and that being the product of the way that I was raised and the environments in which I grew up in. And, you know, I was the new kid in school every year, all the way up until eventually I was in college. So from the time I was 4, I was the new kid. And with that comes a lot of struggle socially, picked on, bullied year after year. So I did gravitate towards athletics because that was kind of a constant. No matter where I would be, there would be athletic programs I could get into. And then I think more so the idea that, you know, athletes were the cool kids in school. The athletes were the popular kids in school. The athletes were the ones at the cool kid lunch table, and they were respected and they were maybe even feared. And I think that's really what drew me to sports more so than a love of the game. Of course, I did enjoy playing, but I think that I was more drawn to that. So, you know, I attribute a lot of my resilience that I have today, which is a huge ingredient in achievement and overcoming adversity and success in general, to that hardship of the way that I was raised. And it's not solely having to face those fears daily and the struggle and the discomfort. It's actually that coupled with having amazing people in my life that would provide me guidance. And I'm talking more specifically about both my parents. And they had me very, very young. My father had me, he was 20. So he's a kid trying to figure out how to be a dad and put food on the table. So I've had recent conversations with both my parents about this. Like, were you just that forward thinking in social sciences and psychology and childhood development? Because what they did an amazing job of is they would give me that guidance and give me some tools and some techniques and let me know that I was loved. But they would not remove the adversity for me. You know, they didn't keep me in this bubble. They would give me some assistance and then they would send me right back out. And that's really what conditioning is. It's get your ass kicked, build back up. Get your ass kicked, get built back over and over and over again. That's conditioning. Whether you're conditioning your body, your lungs, your mind, it's a product of that hot and cold contrast through repetition over time with consistency. And I was a product of that growing up. Both my parents are like, no, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just trying to do the best we could, which is pretty typical for, I'd say, most parents, regardless of how young they are when they have kids. So I attribute a lot of my current mental toughness and a lot of my current successes as a result of that kind of upbringing.
Did you have a lot of doubts that you had to like tackle at a young age?
Oh yeah, I was riddled with doubts, and trying to. And the irony of this as well is, as a young kid, and I speak for myself, and I would probably speak on behalf of a lot of kids and young people, is you're trying to fit in, and you want to be accepted, and you want to be welcomed into a particular community, or maybe even any community, which was my case. So I almost found myself becoming this kind of chameleon, where the new spot, I would like find a person or group and then just try to assimilate to them, regardless if it was anything that I was interested in doing, whether it was music or comic books or this particular subject in school or this particular sport. It was like, I just wanted to be accepted by people around me. And so that comes with a lot of doubt because, 12 months later or less, I'm in a new spot and I'm like, am I still that I was trying to be for the last year or so, or am I trying to be someone new and something different? So yeah, it was a pretty consistent internal self-doubt roller coaster ride that I would be going on. And then, down the line, as I was trying to overcome some pretty monumental adversity, I dealt with the same thing. So these are skills. These are learned behaviors, resilience, mental toughness, grit. These are learned behaviors. These are skills. And like any skill that you want to learn and be better at requires repetition, ideally purposeful, deliberate repetition. And while I didn't ask for those reps when I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, I got them anyway. And that's really where the foundation was built and how I was able to kind of continue to compound on top of it.
When did you know that you wanted to go into the service? And did you know that you wanted to go into special forces?
I began looking at the military when I was in high school, really for the same reason that I was drawn to athletics. I was trying to fill this massive void. I was this small, scared, insecure kid who lived most of my life in fear. And I wanted to experience the other end of that spectrum. I wanted strength. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be feared because I had lived scared for so long. And so the military, I felt like could give me that outlet. And the only thing that I think really stopped that from happening out of high school was I got recruited to play football in college, which is the only reason why I went to college. I was a horrible student. I did the bare minimum just to skate by. But at this point, I was decent in athletics and I really excelled in football particularly. So the only reason I went to college was for that. And then the beginning of my sophomore year, I just turned 19 years old, was 9/11. And that was really the tipping point for me. That was the catalyst for me. Mm-hmm. And I really struggled to stay in school because I knew where we were going as a nation. And I wanted to be part of that response. I stayed in school. I grinded out the rest of my degree, which was this huge challenge and a struggle. And then I began looking at options to come into the military right after that. I felt like I wanted to go directly into special operations. I wanted to get into special operations as soon as possible. I felt like my physical attributes could be best utilized there. And I think more so than that, I wanted to make as much of a difference a single person can make. It was not intended to be a career for me or a profession or a lifestyle. This was come in, get to the front of the fight, kick some ass, get some justice, and then get out of the army and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. And as I started shopping different recruiters and looking at the different options, I ultimately landed on the Army Special Forces because, one, it gave me the fastest route to get directly to that unit, which is an option that still exists today. It's known as the 18 X-ray contract option, otherwise known as a Special Forces recruit, which gives guys off the street the chance to bypass serving anytime in the conventional Army. So I was enticed by that. And then I had begun doing a little bit of research on what Green Berets do, because I really didn't know. I'd seen the movies and John Wayne and like Rambo, but I had no idea what Green Berets actually did. So I began doing some homework, and I was really drawn to the different mission sets that special forces are expected to do, particularly the more well known, and kind of our primary one being that of unconventional warfare.
I want to back up a hair. You mentioned you stuck out college for the next 2 years, but you hated it. And how did you show up for yourself every single day doing something you didn't like to do?
Well, I mean, in college, I oftentimes didn't. I would procrastinate. I would put things off. I lived a somewhat typical college athlete lifestyle. As long as I was eligible, I was to play. I was more than fine with that. So I avoided a lot of the hard things in college, and I started making some really knucklehead-like decisions and some really horrible choices that could have very easily taken my life in an entirely different direction. Again, I think I was overcompensating for basically an entire life of insecurity and doubt and fear. And at this point, I began to develop my body physically. I really started to grow into myself, and I was this really big, strong, athletic individual. And I began wielding that in ways in which I'm not exactly proud of. So I didn't live a very disciplined lifestyle, and it really wasn't very structured. Playing ball was the only thing that kind of gave me even anything kind of positive direction to be employing myself. So I kicked a lot of things down the road. And I like this point specifically because some, will read my book or watch a video on me or hear me at a conference or something and kind of get this idea that I was always this way. Like I was groomed to be, or I always lived this very disciplined, structured, work ethic driven lifestyle, which is totally inaccurate. That really didn't come about for me until I pivoted my life into a more positive direction. I decided to enter the military, and once I graduated school, and although a lot of those foundational aspects were there, it was buried. It was buried under a lot of insecure and poor decision making. So the military is really what began extracting that from me, and then layering on additional skill within those areas on top of it.
So when you decided to fast track to special forces, did you train prior to all that? Like, how when you just say, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes, and then you develop the habit of just putting things off. Well, it sounds to me like you developed that in school where you put things off and you were procrastinating and you didn't have that discipline. So how did you re-get that discipline to then have the success that you had to even make it through special forces?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I said that the military really began to pull that from me, and I would stand by that. If you backed up that time horizon a little bit prior, it was once I decided that I was going to enter the military and I was going to become a Green Beret. That was really what began me taking things a lot more seriously. And, I was always in the gym and I was always training my body and, doing martial arts and boxing. But like living an athletic lifestyle was just normal for me, but it really wasn't all that structured and really well thought out. And there wasn't a whole lot of intent attached to it. I was doing a lot of things physically, but without an intent, like a desired end state that's associated with the task. You can do things all day long. You're not necessarily progressing towards anything. In my opinion, you need to have a target to be working towards. So once I made the decision, like I'm going to become a Green Beret, now I had a target. And now I had an intent, and I had great people around me, my strength coaches, to help me kind of dial in what I was doing. So what ended up being, about 18 weeks or 20 weeks, I put myself through this like crazy training program, mostly physical, but I began reading and studying a little bit of stuff about the military and just how they operate. So I'd say it got a little more dialed in prior to me actually going to basic training. Mm-hmm. And that is the result of me having an identified mission.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by my absolute favorite company. If you know me or seen videos or photos of me, then you know I always have one on my wrist. I absolutely adore this company. DiscoverOmnia.com. DiscoverOmnia.com is the world's first smart crystal bracelet. Every single bracelet is handmade in the USA using real genuine crystals made on memory wire. Every bracelet is unisex and They're also aromatherapy. The cool part is the black onyx charm that is on the bracelet. It scans to your cell phone, connecting you to their Wellness Hub Elevate. You can also access their Wellness Hub Elevate on your computer or tablet. You just have to sign into your account. The bracelet gives you a 12-month membership. It has over 200 pieces of self-care content, from motivational tips, meditations, breathing exercises, exercises around the theme of your bracelet, printable journals, and so much more. The content is ever growing. And that's not all. The bracelet also gives you lifetime access to their Elevate Together Club, which meets monthly via Zoom. Each month is themed to give you actionable takeaways to elevate your life. And with this podcast episode, you get 40% off your purchase order by using the code Mindset Podcast. Use that code Mindset Podcast for 40% off. Just go to discoveromnia.com. Discoveromnia.com, code Mindset Podcast for 40% off. Get your bracelet today. So then you go in, and then tell us a little bit about, because again, you are the first Green Beret on the show, how the training process works, and for yourself, like your experience going in. Did you know the challenges that you were going to be facing? Were there a lot of people that were quitting around you? Like, what was going on for you?
Yeah. So by the time I got into the Army, I was 24 years old. It took me almost 7 years to graduate from college. That's how horrible of a student I was. So I was a grown man with a lot of life experience. So I show up to basic training, and I got like 17, 18-year-old kids around me. And in my mind, I was already like ready to go. Like, get me the selection as soon as possible. I had this very like egotistical, like, I'm going to dominate this whatever's in front of me, no matter what, based almost entirely on my physical characteristics and capabilities. So basic training, it was 16 weeks the way that I ended up going, because they basically stack basic training and advanced individual training right on top of each other, because you come in as an infantryman is the route you take if you come in as a special forces recruit. Therefore, if you don't make it as a Green Beret, then you are an infantryman, and then you end up going down the route of an infantry soldier. So my route was Fort Benning, basic training, straight into advanced individual training. From there, small break to airborne school, which is also at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I had a break because the holidays were up and there was a lag. And then I arrived at Fort Liberty, North Carolina, and then began the actual special forces process or aspect of the training. And for 18 X-rays, for the guys off the street, we would get a preparatory course prior to going into selection. And this was just to give us some kind of basic military or Army fundamentals that most of us probably don't know, like knot tying, land navigation, these things that most soldiers would have at least an idea of how to do because they lived their lives as soldiers before going to selection. So they give us kind of a prep course in that. And really, it's a lot of physical stuff. They're just basically beating the hell out of you physically and then teaching you classes in between. My journey was a little weird. That condensed that course, which was supposed to be 5 weeks long or 6 weeks long, for me was only 5 days long. And then I ended up in selection much sooner than I anticipated, which was totally cool with me. I was ready to go, go to selection, which at the time I went was just 2 weeks long. Now it's closer to 3. I think it's 20 days, 21 days. You get selected, and then you begin the Special Forces qualification course, which for me took a little over a year, which is still right around average, depending on the actual job that you get, because there are certain specialties that you are taught when you're in the Q course. So for me, from the moment I got to basic training, it took about 2.5 years or so of training with these little kind of gaps in between before I ended up donning my Green Beret for the first time and then showing up to my unit.
Within those 2 years, were there a lot of people that were dropping out around you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the attrition rate then was higher than it is now, but it's still high. Like my selection class had about 300 candidates that showed up on day one. And I want to say around 100 made it to the end. So about 2/3 quit or get injured during that 2 weeks. So you're left with about a third, about 100 candidates are left. And out of those 100, they selected about 60 or so, maybe 65, give or take. So out of the 300 that showed up on day one, around 60 or so were actually selected. And then, that's one filter you make it through. And then you end up in, phase one of the qualification course, which at the time that I went through was still very much also kind of an assessment as well. Now it's a little different. Now they look at the Q course more as a school, as a training environment where the cadre and the instructors are there to teach you tasks. While that was also true when I went through, they were also still very much assessing you. So the attrition rate in the Q course portion, which can take anywhere from 12 to 20 or so months, depending on the specifics, there were a lot more people, a lot more guys that were getting dropped from the course for not meeting certain standards. So just as you move from phase one to phase two to phase three, you're losing guys on the way as well. And then, you get to the end and whoever's left is who's at graduation with you.
Did you have any struggles or challenges along the way till graduation?
Oh yeah. Constant challenge, constant challenges. That's like kind of the whole point is, different types of challenges during different phases, so you're learning tactics, you're learning strategy, you're learning different techniques, but you're also learning, foreign language, and you're learning some, cultural dynamics through the course. You're learning leadership principles. It's not all how many pull-ups can you do, how fast can you run, and how efficient can you clear a room with your CQB, abilities. There's a lot that's being thrown at you. I severely underestimated how difficult leadership attributes were going to be for me. Team dynamic was going to be for me. And then foreign language absolutely kicked my ass. So one of the differentiators between Green Berets and most of the other special operations units is we have to be proficient in a foreign language. That's a requirement. So you spend anywhere from 4 to 6 months in the Q course just learning a foreign language in a classroom. Like that's it. And I struggled with that. That was really difficult for me. So there were a lot of different points that were challenging. Most of it, was challenging, some easier than others for different people. But yeah, it's 2.5 or so years of consistent adversity and challenges.
So let's talk about what you just talked about with how the foreign language just be up, and and there was, like you said, in the last 2.5 years, there's a lot of challenges and it's constant adversity the whole entire time. So how do you I want to keep saying show up for yourself, but essentially it's, you have to do the work. Like my coach would always say, I could give you all the tools, but I can't drag you through the finish line. You have to take yourself. So how do you take yourself through those adversities and those challenges and get to the end? And I understand I had a goal and I was just shooting at that goal. What else can you say about that?
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head, because for me, and I speak, I think for a lot, it begins and oftentimes ends with a clear vision of the desired end state, a high degree of clarity of the mission. Because why are you putting yourself through this? And this is what I just had a conversation with some random TSA agent in the airport the other day as I was going through traveling, who's like, hey, I know who you are and I want to be a Green Beret. We had a quick conversation. I'm like, listen, know your why. And in my opinion, there's no wrong answer. Now, I may be unique with that opinion. Some feel that you need to have the right reason. I would argue that as long as your reason is grounded in truth and self-awareness, then that's going to be the thing that gets you through those really hard times. When you're asking yourself, why take another step? Why try to do another rep? Why try to go do this task that I just completely failed again? That's going to be the answer to the question. And if you're lying to yourself about the reason why you're there, odds are it's not going to be strong enough to get you through it. So whether it's rooted in patriotism or desire to serve and defend your country, or you just want to see if you can do it. I just want to see if I can do it. kind of the David Goggins like approach, who really just wanted to see if he could become a Navy SEAL, like push himself to the absolute extreme and see if you can make it. Whatever the reason is, know it, have a firm grasp of it, because that's what's going to pull you out of those dark moments, which are inevitable. They're going to be coming in droves. So, you weaponize your why. And then I guess maybe more kind of the tactical level when you're like in the moment. I just kind of started to develop these little phrases that I would say to myself. And this is pretty common, certainly in the special operations communities, but it exists outside that. There's these little phrases that you can quickly tell yourself, scream it out loud if you need to. It's in moments like this that determine how bad you want it and if you're going to make it. And we all want stuff. And it's just those that are willing to push through the hard things to turn that want into something real. And one of the expressions that I developed during my training that I still use today, it's on a whiteboard right now in my closet. This is the cost of admission. And I would just say that to myself and saying, you asked to be here. You're the one that decided you want to be a Green Beret. You want to serve at the tip of the spear. You want to get payback for 9/11. This is the cost of admission. So you want it, which is fine, but are you going to make it real? And if the answer to that is yes, then this is your opportunity to make that real. So you almost begin to just reframe what adversity is. And yes, it's going to be hard, and there's risk involved, and there's likely discomfort and pain and doubt and fear and all that, but it's also an opportunity. And when you're seeing those around you that are off-ramping, literally in real time, they're feeling the same, they're doing the same thing, feeling likely the same degree of suffering, and they're ringing the bell. It's like, all right, like that's what the alternative is. You either keep going or you ring the bell. Like, how bad do you want it? Because if you're being honest with yourself and you're saying, I want this more than anything right now, now's your chance to actually demonstrate that.
Yeah, in the very first episode we had, my coach said nobody rides this train for free, and I feel like that's the same thing in life. Life is meant to be experienced, and if you want to experience life, you got to put yourself through it, and fight your way through what life gives you. When you then became a Green Beret, you had, before your 2013 accident, you had 2 other accidents prior to that. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I was wounded in combat twice prior to the incident that would cost my leg. Both of those injuries were in the same deployment. So all 3 of those happened on the same deployment. We went in to Afghanistan in September of 2012 for a 6-month deployment. And it was during the duration of those 6 months that I was wounded 3 times total.
So I want to get into this part of the show on your injury. And I want to talk about, first of all, prior to this, when you had your first injury, we're going to go to the very first one. Is it kind of like, this is just what's to be expected? I mean, you don't go to a knife fight and not expect to get cut, so it's like, you expect that you may get scraped up a bit, or worse, die. So for you, like, how do you come through that, like, and go the next round and then go the next round and just keep on wanting to keep going? Was there ever a fear of death, or a fear of, like, you have a wife, you have kids? I don't know if you had that back then, but like, was there ever a moment, or you had parents, where you just like had that fear of kind of like this is a lot?
Short answer is yeah. I mean, absolutely. On most days, the expression courage does not exist without fear. And there is this, I'd say, general perception that, particularly with special operations personnel, that we are fearless or emotionless. And, like, whether it's through training or however someone thinks that we literally pump the emotions out of our body and they no longer exist anymore, is completely and totally inaccurate. We are creatures of emotion, regardless of what you do for a living. So what makes special operations personnel unique is not removing the emotion, it's emotional regulation. It's the ability to know what the emotion is you're experiencing and gain control of it, and then still be able to make objective, logical decisions. That's it. And is developed over training. And it's just an important nuance. So the term fearless, if you looked at that literally, is completely and totally inaccurate. So yeah, most days, fear is part of the lifestyle you live when you're within those types of environments. When I was injured for the first time, I was the first one on my team to be somewhat seriously injured. I took some grenade shrapnel to the back of my shoulder, blew about a lemon-sized hole in me. To your point, you do kind of have this almost anticipation that this could happen because this is your chosen profession and you're willingly going into known gunfights. And that's what we asked for. And that's what we want to be doing. So yeah, okay, I may get banged up today. I may lose my life today. Roger that. This is what I'm here to do. So full send anyway. What I like to point out about this injury, because this was the first of us to be wounded and in kind of serious capacity, certainly not the last on this deployment, was at that point, we'd only been on the ground for a few weeks, but we had been operating aggressive. And there is a razor thin line between confidence and cocky. And in my opinion, we had kind of spilled over that a little bit. We almost had this idea that we were invincible. We got the upper hand, we got the training, we got the skills, we got the weaponry. Like we have all of this to our advantage. Like we can't be touched. We can't be touched. We're invincible. We are going to go in and annihilate 100 times out of 100. Nothing's ever going to happen to us. And then boom, literally boom. Okay, one of us is like taking like some type of damage. It was an eye-opening event for all of us, particularly for my leadership on my detachment at that time. It was like, damn, yeah, we are good. Really good. And we got all this stuff and we got the Velcro and the Copenhagen and the optics and like all the cool guy stuff. But like we are human beings. And these are some resilient fighters that are not just going to, drop their stuff and run when we show up. Like they're going to dig in. And so it was an awakening moment for us all that really did start to adjust some of the decisions that were being made tactically. But yeah, it's a shock. Oh my gosh, that this is totally happening. Adrenaline's through the roof, but training kicks in, you plug it up, you put a pressure dressing on it, you realize that, wow, this stuff actually works, because you do all this kind of training before you go get into the game. And now you're playing the game and you're playing the game based on the way that you've trained, but it's different. I mean, but you see why we train the way we do when it's happening for real. And you're going through these different courses of action options to address problems. And then those problems actually start to be solved. And you're like, wow, this stuff actually kind of works, So it was more of an awakening for us all that, yeah, we're really good and we're going to continue to kick ass, but we need to be watching that line between confidence and cocky.
How do you train your emotions to control them?
Deliberate, strategic exposure to discomfort, I guess, would probably be the more concise way I can summarize it. I think it's easier to look at doing that physically. You get on the assault bike, which is like a torture machine, and you're like, I'm going to do this like sprint workout, and you're into it, and in the first 30 seconds, 60 seconds, you're like, oh yeah, I feel great, and then like 90 seconds, 2 minutes comes in, you're like, I feel like I'm going to die. And like everything in your body is telling you to stop or to slow down or get off this thing. And the pain starts to set in, your lungs are burning, maybe you're losing peripheral vision, so I think it's more obvious when you're training that way physically and you're at that crossroads and you say, what am I going to do? Am I going to peel off? Am I going to off ramp? Am I going to start going at 50% instead of 100? Am I just going to flat out quit? Or am I going to keep going? And particularly when you're doing that physically, in isolation, like the cliche early morning, late night, grind sessions when no one else is around, no one's paying attention to you, your family, teammates, your bosses, your haters, like no one knows what you're doing. And you could easily scale it back to 50% or flat out stop. And no one's going to know the difference other than you. So it's in those moments where it's just you and your character and you decide to continue to push anyway. Those wins compound over time. And I would argue that while the result of the task itself provides value, that the execution in the face of discomfort provides greater value. It's the fact that you still did it when everything said not to, because not only does that compound over time, but you see that oftentimes our brains will tell us something for the sake of our survival, but our brain's playing it safe. Like we have more to put out. We just have to be willing to do it. It gets a little bit more difficult, I would argue, when you're talking about training your emotions, you're training your mentality, although there's a direct correlation. Your physical health and mental well-being are directly correlated. So I use the example of, if you're in any sort of serious relationship, I'm married, we got two small boys. It's like, that there's a conversation that needs to be had, and there's going to be a lot of really convincing reasons as to why you may want to avoid it, or it's not the right time, or let me just see how it plays out, or just to like push that difficult conversation down the road for the sake of saving our emotional wellness. But you do it anyway. And, you lean into that discomfort. Like, this is going to be uncomfortable and this is going to be hard. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to put together a little game plan and I'm going to execute on that. And then just like on the assault bike, when you do that, you see a couple things. One, wow, I really, I did that. Everything inside of me was telling me that I couldn't do it, or it wasn't the right time, or whatever the reason or excuse may have been, but I did it anyway. And you know what? It's doable. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that's the compounding effect. So these opportunities are around us. I mean, just constantly throughout every single day. We just have to, I think, begin seeing them as opportunities to win over time when done with consistency, and then fight that urge to off ramp, fight that biological urge to off ramp with the reasonings, aka excuses, and lean in and prove to yourself that you can do it. And the more you do it, like anything else, it gets slightly easier over time, and it gets slightly more automated over time, where this just becomes the way you operate.
After your first injury, you went back, and then, you had your second injury. In between the first and the second one, what kind of fear was there, or anything going on when you go back into combat after that first injury?
I'd say no more than what was already there for me. In fact, it may have made my ability to employ courage in the face of fear a little easier, because, I took a pretty decent shot, something that could have killed me. Obviously I got lucky, a couple more inches in the other direction and, I'm probably done. It probably boosted my confidence just that much more. It doesn't mean that the fear goes away, but it means that I'm now equipped with just that much, another data point that demonstrates that I can do this. And I've got great people around me that are highly trained, and I'm highly trained, mostly as a result of them teaching me how to do things. So let's go. Because if something like this happens again, which it would, we can handle it.
I actually want to back up a little bit and ask you a question from earlier, where you mentioned when you were a kid, there was a lot of insecurities and you were a chameleon and you were just working on fitting in. And at what point did those insecurities go away and you became the person that you are and want to be?
I'm not sure if they've ever gone away entirely. Because there are times now, still today, that I experience insecurity. And I think that's totally expected and part of us as humans. Many aren't going to want to share that, out of a fear of being judged, or, I want to be seen as this like hyper type A, fearless animal all the time. Okay, cool. I would argue that that's probably not the case. I'm more than comfortable saying like, yeah, I experience that still now. And I think that that's a result of continuously pushing yourself to be better and to learn new things and to reach outside that comfort zone and live outside that comfort zone. Because if you're going to be continuously striving into the unknown, I don't know, like how is this going to play out? Insecurity doesn't necessarily mean stagnation. You can feel the insecurity. Like, I don't know how this is going to end, but what I do know is that I have made doing hard things habitual, and that's evidence-based. That's purely objective. I can look back and say, look at all these hard things that I did that I could have avoided. So while you still may not know how it's going to play out, you can do hard things. And that, I think, is a powerful tool. So to answer your question maybe more acutely, I'd say, once I got to the teams and I began living my lifestyle as a Green Beret, once I got here and started doing this is all I wanted to do. This was it. I mean, I was fully invested. I didn't have the family that I have today. wife, kids. It was like this operator lifestyle. Everything was involved around just being better at that. Because I was living off of it. I was thriving off of it. It was no longer a job for me. It was a lifestyle. So, you do that and you got that vision real clear and you're going back into the game, in 6 or so months. So it's like there's no time to mess around because it's about to be game time again. Through repetition, confidence is built. And in my opinion, confidence is evidence-based. Now, you can scream affirmations into the mirror to try to increase an energy to go do something that scares you. I don't know if I'd call that false confidence, but I would certainly call it something different than confidence. I think true confidence is evidence-based, and that's earned over time through multiple hundreds of thousands of repetitions on certain tasks and crafts, so that when it comes time to go do something, you can do it because you've done it so often. And after, being on the teams for a few years, that evidence-based truth was just continuing to grow. So my insecurity at large, just generally speaking, kind of began to dissipate because I put the work in.
Now I'm going to fast forward and go back to where we were. Thank you for that answer. And when you then got your second injury, what was going on through your mind? Now it's like, oh my God, second time. You said there was ego, was high the first time, and then we learned from that. And then, then there was another injury that came on.
Yeah, I mean, the second time I was wounded, I took an AK-47 round to the face. I don't know if you can see the scar. They did a great job cleaning me back up. There was actually a plastic surgeon that was in Afghanistan that put me back together. When this happened, 6 of my friends were in the side of another vehicle that was decimated by a roadside bomb, and they were all fighting for their lives. And I didn't even know that this was from a gunshot for like hours and hours later. I knew I'd smashed my face up pretty good and I was bleeding a lot, but it was a scratch, and that's not this machismo tough guy. It's just, I looked at it that way because I'm treating my friends who are dying, and this was nothing compared to what was going on around me. So, in the moment, I didn't really think much of it at all. Once I eventually got in front of a doctor, hours later, he's like, hey, you took a gunshot. It's a gunshot wound. I'm like, okay. He's, cauterized it, stitched it back up, gave me some antibiotics, kept an eye on it for like a day or two. And then I was right back with the boys, right back to work. So it was kind of just another event within a really challenging deployment. Guys were getting blown up. Guys were losing their lives. Like, this was nothing. In context. I think that's why the context is incredibly important, because if someone was just like going to go walk down the street today to go to the grocery store and they take a rifle round to the face, that's going to seriously alter the rest of their day and week and month and potentially the rest of their life. Yeah. So the context is important. We're in Afghanistan. We've been there several months. We're in gunfights on most days. All the teams that within our area are all getting after it the same way. This is just the environment that I've chosen to immerse myself in. So it really didn't mess with me all that much. If anything, it maybe just reinforced my confidence just that much more, just kind of like after I was wounded the first time.
Now we'll go into the third time. Can you talk a little bit about when your big injury happened?
Yeah, we only had a couple weeks left before we were heading home. This was March now of 2013, and getting ready to go on an operation. We had a whole bunch of different partner force guys that were going out with that day. And the short version of the story is a member of the Afghan National Police Force, prior to us going out on this operation, jumped up on the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck that had a mounted PKM belt-fed machine gun and just opened fire into me and my friends from about 30 feet away, which was the initiation of a complex ambush. So there were about 30 enemy fighters that had our camp almost entirely surrounded, that all began raining in machine gun and rockets and whatnot on top of us. So most of the damage to me was to my right leg. I took anywhere from 5 or 6 rounds to my right leg alone, which basically just decimated it. It just chewed it to shreds. Severed my femoral artery, shattered my femur into like 20 pieces. I treated myself with a series of tourniquets and internal pressure dressing. And eventually I was able to get medevaced out. Once the guys that were still upright were able to get the situation under control on the ground, they could start landing birds. There were 12 U.S. casualties 3 of which were killed. And eventually I was stable enough to survive a flight to Germany, got there, and then I arrived at Walter Reed, where I would spend the next year, about 35, 40 surgeries on my right leg as they were just incrementally amputating it piece by piece as they were battling infection. Eventually got that under control, and then kind of began my recovery process, learning how to live life as a one-legged guy, learning how to operate a prosthetic. And after a year, returned back to my unit, and I was offered a full medical military retirement, which I wanted nothing to do with. And the Army really did their best to force me into medical retirement. So I had to dig in, and I found myself in an administrative brawl with the Army that I eventually won. Took about 8 months. During that time, I had been working as an instructor, and it was then that I made it known to my leadership that I wanted to get back onto the team. And, it hadn't happened before. And like with anything that's never happened before, it's met with a lot of concerns and questions and a whole shitload of doubt. But God bless them, because they did give me the opportunity to demonstrate my capacity to operate in that type of environment. And they ran me through the ringer. It took about 12 weeks of different assessments and tests, which at the conclusion of that, I was given the green light to go back to my team. I went back to the same one I was on when I was wounded. And about 7 or so weeks later, we were back in Afghanistan.
I want to talk about the time in the hospital as you're going through all these surgeries. In your mind, you've always wanted to get back to the teams. Is that correct? Like that was your goal the whole entire time?
Correct.
I know nothing about what you're going through or what you went through at all. I lost my hearing when I was 21. I went completely deaf. It suddenly happened. One moment I was eating dinner at a restaurant. The next minute I stand up and my hearing is suddenly gone. And I'm at the mercy of the doctors that are giving me steroids and helping me to figure out, like, A, what happened, and B, like, telling me it'll never come back and all this other stuff. It's like, and I had to keep fighting to be like, no, there got to be another way. Like, I have to be able to get my hearing back, like, and working towards that. How do you, as at the mercy of these doctors who you're going through all these surgeries and piece by piece, your leg is just, you're losing bits and pieces of your leg. How do you keep that eye on the prize on what you wanted when you're completely out of control? Like, it's not in your control in terms of what's going on with your leg and your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I ended up doing was, and this is a philosophy that I've adopted and one that I coach. I understand that can't plays a role at some point. It's a word that I have a difficult relationship with under most circumstances, but it's also true at times. So in those moments, consider disregarding what you quote unquote can't do and tripling or quadrupling down the things that you can do. And not only does that give you something positive to focus on, but if you've done strategically and tactically, you can actually increase strength, knowledge, capacity, your overall capability while you're addressing and dealing with this issue, whether that's physical or otherwise. So for me, that began with a simple leg lift of my sound leg. So my left leg did take some damage. I took a round through my lower left leg as well, which caused a little bit of problems, but it wasn't broken and I can move it. So what I would do, and this just started by me trying it once, as I'm laying there in bed, helpless, and I need someone to help me do just about everything. Feed me, bathe me. I'm laying there like a vegetable, which is really hard as a warrior and as someone who's used to being asked to solve problems and being able to do it. It's really hard to be relying on others to do basic life functions. And the frustration was building. And at some point, I just simply raised my left leg up. I'm laying in a hospital bed and I just activated my hip flexor and my left leg came off the bed and it went right back down. That was it. And it was like, oh, well, I can do that. Look, I'm sitting here saying I can't do anything on my own because most things did require some assistance. But you know what? I found something that I could do on my own. And that just became my thing. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? Today I'm going to do 50 of these leg lifts, boom. And then tomorrow I'm going to do 100. And then the next day I'm going to do 120. And like that became what I focused on. So the idea of, got it, we got an issue that is being dealt with right now. We can't ignore it, but we're at a lag point here. That's injury or other circumstance that's being addressed, but I'm unable to operate in a normal capacity with this aspect of my life, or in this case of my body. So I'm going to triple down on the things that I can do. And I think that just from a philosophical perspective, that's quite powerful. I get a chance to spend time with a lot of people that are going through injuries, whether it's a loss of a limb or a torn ACL. And it's like, oh, my whole life is crashing down around me because what I normally could do, I can't do it. And I'm like, I got it. But what can you do? Because if we triple down on those things, not only is it going to give you something to do other than lose your mind, but you can actually increase your strength and your capability during this lull. You're going to turn your lull into a positive. So that was my approach, and it just happened. It wasn't this well thought out strategy. I didn't like read some self-help book that like taught this. I just did it one day, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's going to be my outlet. And then just slowly that menu of options of what you can do begins to grow over time. And then so you just begin adding more and more things that you can do, and you're continuously testing the things that you can't or that are currently kind of in repair mode until that gets back to normal. Because once you're back to quote normal, think of all of the strength and all of the additional attributes that you built over time during this kind of transition period, this little lull you were going through, because a lot of those are things that you may keep, even though you could go back to squatting normally, right? Go ahead and do that. But look at all these other exercise choices that you now have in your repository because you were forced to focus on those versus the others. So you just increased your arsenal on what you can do. So I've used the same exact methodology for many, many other injuries since losing my leg. It's like, yep, this totally sucks. I got it. How do I use this to my advantage?
Did you ever at any point fall into like the victim trap?
The short answer is not really. I want to be very clear. When I was in the hospital and even, beyond that, this was an emotional roller coaster ride, up and down, sometimes minute to minute, day to day, just a whirlwind of, fear and discomfort and doubt. And then you get the surge and you're going, and then you fall, sometimes literally in my case, and I'm laying on the ground. I just smacked my face on the ground again for the third time today because I still can't figure out how to walk with this robot leg and just the frustration. So it's like this crazy roller coaster ride. But generally speaking, I really didn't go down a negative road or this victimhood mentality. I get it when that happens. And oftentimes it's understandable. As the result of a traumatic event. And that's okay. What I do know is that the solutions to those dilemmas do not exist in being a victim and then the woe is me and why did this have to happen to me, or why did the universe or God or whomever like put this on me, and just sit there and dwell. It's not going to work. It may be what you want to do, just curl up in this woe is me and just sulk, versus getting after it and getting out there and, pushing yourself. So I understand it. I was able to kind of wipe that option off the table immediately. Like I know what I need to do, or at least I know what I'm going to do. And the only way I'm going to make that possible is to figure out what has to happen between now and then, and sitting in the corner sulking, as the victim is not going to benefit that whatsoever.
It's so easy to fall into that victimhood trap. It's so easy to just crawl up in a ball and just detach from everything. I feel like, we do it a lot in society just by like sitting on the couch and watching TV all day or scrolling on social media, and we're just wasting things away because we're in avoidance of the things that we're supposed to be doing. Do you feel like all of your training helped you in this aspect to not fall into that and to do what you needed to do to keep going?
A huge aspect of that, my life in the military for sure. And then just other ways that I chose to live. Jiu-jitsu, great example. I've been doing combat sports most of my life. Jiu-jitsu, one I really took hold of about 12 or so years ago. And like, move or die. That's it. Those are your options. Move or die. And like, it's a great comparison to life in general. And like, those are your choices. What are you going to do? And so yes, the military, the things that I've just been interested in doing have been part of equipping me with skill and knowledge to address that. And then I've also just, as I've grown more interested in this topic and analyzing, why is it so easy to be a victim? And, just briefly, if we choose to recognize the reality that emotional wellness is tied directly to physical health, then this all becomes very crystal clear as to why this is so easy, as to why ownership is so difficult, because emotional wellness, negative emotions over time can downregulate hormones and make us physically ill. And the opposite can also happen as well. So they're very directly correlated. And if our brain wants to safeguard us from that, from experiencing emotional pain, because our brain wants to keep us alive, and getting sick it goes against that. It's the justifications as to why this isn't your fault, or why this is just meant to be, or you got dealt a bad hand. Like, it's not on you. It's not your fault. It in a lot of ways protects us. It puts us in this comfort zone. Like, this is the deck of cards I was handed, and like, that's it. And there's nothing I can do about it. This, like, it is what it is mentality is also, it's so easy for us because we're programmed to protect our mental wellness. Because if you look at the truth, that can be hard. That can be a hard pill to swallow, and it can cause damage, emotional damage, which can lead to physical unwellness or illness. So there's a very quite simple biological, physiological reason as to why this is so easy for us and why ownership is so difficult. Because fault, in my opinion, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter whose fault it is under most circumstances. You're in a courtroom. Okay, I got it. Generally speaking, who cares whose fault it was? Because irrelevant, it is your responsibility to take your circumstances and live the best life possible. That is your responsibility. And if you're willing to look in the mirror and accept that, that can be a difficult discomfort to take on to our emotional wellness. So in my opinion, that's why it is incredibly easy to take that victimhood approach and to just curl up in a ball and say, it's not my fault, and this is where I'm supposed to be, and that's all I have as my options. If you're willing to accept the truth that regardless of that, it is your responsibility, and take that discomfort to the face, that's likely step one. And then it's just a matter of begin putting in the reps.
For just someone that's not in the military, doesn't have the training that you had, life is hard. I don't care who you are. Everyone has a hard life. And how can someone prepare for the challenges that are to come? You mentioned jiu-jitsu was a really good outlet. What else can civilians do to really build up that resilience and that to prepare for the hard stuff that they're not ready for?
I mean, you hit it. Life is hard, period. All stop. We just have to simply decide what hard we choose. And if you choose your hard, you get much more control over it. Because it's going to be hard no matter what. Life is either you're in a storm or you're moving to the next one. That's it. And it just keeps going around and around and around and around. If you choose your hard or your hards, now you can weaponize it. Now you can actually employ some strategy and some tactics. So when the unknown challenge comes, which is also inevitable, no matter how much hard stuff you put yourself through on purpose, the unknown, the unanticipated challenges are still showing up. You've got a list, a litany of evidence-based truth that you can do hard things. And this may be a new hard thing, but you can do hard things. So looking at it from that perspective, this is just conceptual. And then down kind of at the tactical level, what do you dislike doing? Ask yourself this. What do you dislike doing that if you're willing to be honest with yourself, will provide you value? Is it reading? Okay, Then do it. Is it waking up early or waking up, 10 minutes before you normally would have? Is it physical exercise? Is it cold tub therapy? Is it sauna? Is it heat or cold? Is it difficult conversations with people that you care about? Is it prioritizing spending time with your kids versus working on the project, at work? So it is on the individual, my opinion, to take a quick examination of the current lifestyle and say, what opportunities am I missing to flex deliberate and strategic discomfort? And then begin seeking them out in ways. And then doing so, the word strategic is there on purpose, because it can very easily get to a point where you're causing increased damage to your system without getting much ROI on that. But finding that line and that threshold, and then as the threshold moves, as the resilience builds, because it's a skill, then it's this constant chase of that. And I'm going to go overboard and say, okay, hold on, I need to rein this back in, and I need to then increase this and decrease this. It's this never-ending process of chasing strategic, deliberate discomfort without getting into the realm of reckless. So whether you're talking about temperature, sweating, pushing your muscles, flexing your brain, in the social realms, at work, professionally, we're only limited by our creativity in ways in which we can do this. But if you think that just by sitting around and letting life itself dictate your degree of mental toughness and resilience, it's if it happens at all, which it probably will, it's going to happen at such a snail's pace that I would argue, would be essentially irrelevant. If you are not deliberately seeking it and training and purposefully pushing yourself to get better, which is done through discomfort. Iron sharpens iron. Most of us want to be tougher. Most of us want to be more resilient. Most of us want to be more prepared for the next challenge. That is done through suffering and through discomfort. When done strategically and with consistency, that's how you build it up over time.
One last question for you, because I promise you an hour. Everyone likes to give their opinion, especially when that opinion isn't asked. How do you, and how did you, you had a goal in mind. You wanted to get back to your team. Like, that was your goal. How did you shut out or the other doubt, the people that were giving your opinion on trying to get you to take that medical leave or telling you that you can't do it? And then I'm sure you at some point doubted yourself. I don't know. Like, did you doubt yourself at all? How do you shut out those voices to stick to that goal and to stop the doubt from taking over?
Yeah, this is a great question. For one, did I experience doubt myself? Absolutely. 100%. Most of the time upon failure, which happened regularly, daily even. It's that quick little like, hey man, you think this is possible? Maybe you bit off more than you can chew. And you have that like quick dialogue with yourself. And you're like, no. We're going to find out. Boom. And it's gone, and you're back on target, and you're back to executing. The reason why I love this conversation is because it's very easy for us to say, ignore everyone else and focus on you, like block out the noise and do you. And while there is absolute power in that, there's a reason why it's much easier said than done. It's because human beings are pack animals. We are social creatures by design as part of our survival. That's rooted in our DNA. And you've got some that are more apt to living as kind of that lone wolf, like the Omega personality types. But regardless, we're all built to be social creatures as part of our survival, because back in the day when the saber-toothed tiger would show up, if it was you and 50 of your friends, you had a much better chance of living. And we haven't gone away from that. It's important to know that, because it's quite normal to let other people's opinion of you affect you, because we are designed to be drawn towards others and create communities. Now, whether that's someone that you never met before on Instagram, or if it's your friend or your family member that's judging you or doubting you, there's a reason why it's much easier said than done to just block that out. I want people to just truly understand that it's nothing to feel guilty about if you're letting other people influence you or their opinion is influencing you. It's done on purpose. There's a reason why that exists. So I think it's important to know, have an understanding of that, and then say, okay, cool, I get it. Like, here's why this is so hard. We still need to get past it at a certain point, but now I know why this is difficult. For me, and when you're in the early phases of recovering from injury like this, everybody around you is just telling you whatever they think you want to hear to put you into a good state of mind. So I'm like, I'm coming out of my 9th surgery, and I'm telling people I'm going to go back to the teams and back into combat, and everyone's like, absolutely, man, you got it, you'll do it. Just constant positivity. And then as the process continues, and now I'm training and I'm upright and I'm moving around, those opinions started to change a little bit. And this was out of a place of love. And here's what I was able to grasp. I'll use my father as an example, who's my best friend on the planet. At a certain point, he'd be like, hey, dude, listen, I love you. I don't know if this is going to happen. And I want you to be kind of prepared for that. And this was out of love. He was concerned for me putting this unobtainable goal on such a high pedestal that when I would undoubtedly fail at reaching it, what that could mean for me, that it could spiral me down into this disaster situation. And he wanted to safeguard me from that. I was able to see that eventually and relatively quickly. At first, it was kind of, how dare you doubt me? And I would be like angry about it. But then I was able to get past it. Be like, you know what, bro? This is because you love me and I get it. And I was able to get to a place where I could look at him or anybody and say, you know what? I understand your position. I respect your position. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to remain on target because I think that this is possible, or at a minimum, I'm going to find out if it's possible. And in today's world, which seems like insane for many people to be surrounded by people who have different opinions than you and actually be able to discuss them, I know is like a ludicrous concept, but there's value in that, So I was able to do that. And then I relied on a single word, and that word was faith. And there's certainly a biblical kind of sense to that, for good reason. And while that has grown with me as well, a definition of faith, and the one that I relied on earlier on, was a firm belief in something for which there's no proof, meaning that I don't know if this is possible. Right? Nobody does, but I believe it enough that I'm willing to find out. And my desire is strong enough, and my reasonings and my drivers are strong enough for me to continue to push to find out. Even though I'm the only one who thinks that this is possible, I can stay on target. And that's why I think that becoming comfortable in isolation, mental isolation, can be incredibly powerful. And, physical isolation, right? We talked about the early mornings when no one else is around. There's certainly value there as well. But being so convicted in your beliefs that you can be surrounded by those that don't believe what you do, believe something different than what you do, and be respectful of those opinions and still stay on target because you're locked in to your convictions and you're willing to do just about anything to find out if what you believe to be possible is possible.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. And thanks for being on my show. Talking with you was absolutely incredible. And
thanks, Gina.
I'm very grateful. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Gina. Love the project. Good for you. I'm excited to see it play out. So thanks for the opportunity to be a part of it.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone that's listening. Please go like, share, comment, subscribe now, and become a Patreon member so you can get full access to our bonus episodes and extra goodies that only our Patreons get. And tune in next week for our next episode. And thank you so much for listening.